The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Hundreds of beings from different worlds sat in their seats waiting. The air felt heavy with tension. Captain Hyunwoo of the human ship New Seoul watched from the human section. His hands were tight on his chair arms. At the center of the hall stood Taiho, the representative of the Villani people. His green scales caught the light from above. His three-fingered hand stayed still at his sides, but Hyunwoo could see the small shake in them. Taiho's large yellow eyes looked straight ahead as he waited for the final words. The council speaker, a tall crystalline being called a Nethri, raised one arm. Light moved through his crystal body like water. The council has made its decision, the speaker said. His voice echoed in the hall. The Villani species has been found genetically defective. They cannot produce the bio-light that marks true intelligence. Therefore, they must leave their home world. Ambassador Jimin shot up from her seat in the human section. "This is wrong," she called out. "You cannot judge a whole species based on one missing trait." The Kvetch representative, looking like a giant ant with 4 arms, clicked his mandibles together. "The decision is final. The Villani have 1 solar cycle to evacuate Viridian Prime. The planet's resources are too valuable to waste on inferior beings." Hyunwoo felt sick to his stomach. He had seen war, death, and terrible things in space. But this was different. This was cold, planned cruelty. Around the hall, he saw other minor species looking down at their hands or feet. They were scared they might be next. The Luminari delegate, a being made of pure energy contained in a force field, spoke next. "Any species that helps the Villani will face consequences. The galaxy has spoken." As the session ended, beings began to leave. Most avoided looking at Taiho, who still stood in the center. Hyunwoo walked over to him. Up close, he could see the pain in the alien's eyes, even though his face showed nothing. "I am sorry," Hyunwoo said in simple galactic common language. Taiho's head turned slightly. "Your people are young in the galaxy," he replied quietly. "Do not let them change your hearts like they have changed others." Before Hyunwoo could answer, Taiho walked away. His steps were slow but proud. Other Villani delegates followed him out of the hall. None of them looked back. Ambassador Jimin came over to Hyunwoo. Her face was red with anger. "How can they do this? The Villani are peaceful. They have never hurt anyone." "Power," said a voice behind them. They turned to see Dr. Soo-jin, the human scientist who had been studying alien biology. "It is always about power." The 3 humans left the council hall together. Outside, they could see Villani ships in the distance. Small transport vessels were already heading toward Viridian Prime to begin the evacuation. Hyunwoo thought about the millions of Villani who would have to leave their homes, their history, everything they had ever known. Back on the human ship, Captain Hyunwoo called Earth immediately. The communication took several minutes to reach home across the vast distance of space. When President In-ho appeared on the screen, his face was serious. "We saw the council decision," In-ho said. "What is your assessment, Captain?" "It is genocide, sir," Hyunwoo replied without hesitation. "They are forcing an entire species from their homeworld because they are different." Ambassador Jimin stepped forward. "Mr. President, we cannot let this happen. If we do nothing, we become part of the problem." President In-ho was quiet for a long moment. In the background, they could see other government officials talking quickly. Finally, he spoke. "Send us all the data you have on the Villani. We need to understand exactly what we are dealing with." Dr. Soo-jin activated her portable lab equipment. "Sir, I have been studying Villani biology for the past year. They do not produce biolight, this is true, but their brains work differently than any species we have seen. Their neural pathways are more complex, not less." "Explain," In-ho said. "They think on multiple levels at the same time," Soo-jin continued. "Where other species, including us, think in straight lines, they think in circles and spirals. They can see connections that others miss. They can understand emotions and motivations in ways that seem almost magical." Hyunwoo remembered his conversation with Taiho. The alien had seemed to understand things about humans that even humans did not see clearly. "Are you saying they might be more intelligent than other species?" In-ho asked. "Maybe much more intelligent," Soo-jin replied. "And that might be exactly why the council wants them gone." The implications hit everyone at once. The galactic powers were not getting rid of the Villani because they were inferior. They were getting rid of them because they were superior, because they could see through lies and manipulation, because they might expose the truth about how the galaxy really worked. How long do they have? Inho asked. 1 solar cycle, Jimin answered. About 14 Earth months. That is not enough time to evacuate an entire planet safely, Hyunwoo said. Millions will die in the chaos. President Inho looked off-screen at his advisors. They could hear quick, quiet conversations. When he looked back, his expression had changed. It was harder, more determined. Captain, I want you to go to Viridian Prime immediately. Take whatever supplies you can carry. Help with the evacuation in any way possible. Sir, Ambassador Jimin said carefully. The Luminari warned that any species helping the Villani would face consequences. Inho's eyes went cold. Let them come. Humanity did not crawl out of the caves and reach for the stars just to watch genocide happen in front of us. The communication ended. In the silence that followed, the 3 humans looked at each other. They all knew that their species had just chosen a dangerous path. Earth was young and weak compared to the great galactic powers, but sometimes being right was more important than being safe. Captain Hyunwoo ordered his ship to change course for Viridian Prime. As the new soul turned toward the Villani homeworld, he thought about the choice humanity had made. They could have stayed quiet and safe. Instead, they had chosen to stand with the outcasts. In the distance, other ships were also changing course. Some were Villani vessels rushing home to help with the evacuation, but others were different. Military ships from the Council powers, moving to make sure the Villani left on time. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was really made of. 3 weeks after the Council decision, President Inho stood before the cameras in the Earth Assembly Building. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in their seats waiting. The whole planet was watching. Today, humanity makes a choice, Inho said. His voice was calm but firm. We choose to stand with those who cannot stand for themselves. We choose justice over profit. We choose what is right over what is easy. He paused and looked directly into the camera. Effective immediately, Earth withdraws from all trade agreements with the Nethri, Kvetch, and Luminari empires. Our spaceports are closed to their ships. Our markets are closed to their goods. Around the galaxy, aliens watched in shock. No minor species had ever defied the great powers like this. On their homeworlds, Nethri crystals dimmed with surprise. Kvetch hives buzzed with confusion. Luminari energy fields flickered with anger. But on Viridian Prime, in the refugee camps growing larger each day, Villani families stopped their packing to watch the human broadcast. For the first time in weeks, some of them smiled. Captain Minseo received her orders while her ship was still in hyperspace. Her convoy of 12 converted cargo ships was humanity's first response to the crisis. The ships were full of food, medical supplies, and temporary shelters. More importantly, they carried hope. All ships, this is Minseo, she said over the communication system. We are about to make history. The Villani are counting on us. Earth is counting on us. Do not let them down. When the human convoy dropped out of hyperspace near Viridian Prime, they saw chaos. Thousands of Villani ships filled the space around their world. Some were passenger transports packed with families. Others were cargo ships loaded with whatever belongings people could carry. Many ships looked old and barely spaceworthy. Minseo opened a channel to the Villani Coordination Center. This is Captain Minseo of the Earth Relief Fleet. We are here to help. The reply came quickly, but the voice was shaky with emotion. Captain Minseo, this is Kyung-ho Evacuation Coordinator. We did not expect help from anyone. You have it now. Minseo replied. Where do you need us most? Down on the planet's surface, the evacuation was heartbreaking to watch. Villani families walked through their cities for the last time. Children carried toys and small pets. Adults carried photo crystals that held memories of their ancestors. Old Villani sat in wheelchairs, too weak to understand why they had to leave their homes. Engineer Dong Hyun worked alongside Villani builders to set up emergency shelters for those still waiting for transport. The language barrier was difficult, but they found ways to communicate. When words failed, they drew pictures in the dirt. When pictures failed, they simply worked side by side until the job was done. Your people are kind, said the Villani architect working next to him. The alien's name was difficult for human tongues, so he told Donghyun to call him by the human name Woo Bin. Your people do not deserve this, Donghyun replied. Woo Bin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, In our history there is an old saying, when darkness falls, look for the small lights. Your species is a small light in a very dark galaxy. Meanwhile, in her mobile laboratory, Dr. Hyjin was making discoveries that would change everything. She had been studying Volani brain scans for days, working with Volani scientists who had been forced to abandon their research. "Look at this," she said to her assistant, showing him the brain scan on her screen. "The neural pathways do not just connect differently. They operate on quantum frequencies." Her assistant looked confused. "What does that mean?" "It means their thoughts exist in multiple dimensions at the same time," Hyjin explained. "They can see patterns and connections that we cannot even imagine. They are not missing intelligence. They have too much intelligence for normal biology to contain." The discovery was staggering. The Volani were not genetically defective. They were genetically advanced beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Their brains worked like quantum computers, processing information in ways that made other species look primitive by comparison. But this knowledge came with danger. If the galactic powers learned the truth, they would never let the Volani live. A species that could see through lies and manipulation was the greatest threat possible to corrupt governments. Back in space, Captain Minseo was coordinating the largest rescue operation in human history. Her 12 ships had grown to over 50 as more human vessels arrived. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even private yachts had come to help. "Status report," she called over the communication system. "Shelter construction is ahead of schedule," Dong-hyun reported from the surface. "The Volani workers are incredibly efficient when they have proper materials. Medical centers are operating at full capacity," added Dr. Hyjin. "No serious casualties so far, but we are treating thousands of cases of exhaustion and stress. Food distribution is smooth," reported another voice. "Human and Volani cuisine are compatible. No poisoning incidents." Minseo felt proud of her species. Humans were good at many things, but they were best at helping others when help was needed most. But their good work was about to be interrupted. "Captain," her communications officer called out urgently, "we have incoming ships. Kvetch battle fleet, 30 vessels strong." Through the viewports they could see the insect-like ships approaching. They were sleek and dangerous, built for war. The lead ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than any human vessel. "This is Battle Commander Rix of the Kvetch 5th Fleet," came a harsh voice over the radio. "Human ships, you are interfering with a lawful council operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Captain Minseo looked around her bridge. Her crew looked scared but determined. Behind them, thousands of Volani ships continued their desperate evacuation. Families with children, old people who had never hurt anyone, scientists and artists and teachers who just wanted to live in peace. "Commander Rix," Minseo replied. "This is Captain Minseo of the Earth Relief Fleet. We are conducting humanitarian operations. We will not withdraw." The silence that followed was long and tense. Everyone knew the Kvetch fleet could destroy the human ships easily. But everyone also knew that destroying them would mean killing the Volani refugees they were protecting. Finally, Commander Rick spoke again. "You have been warned, humans. The consequences will be on your own heads." The Kvetch fleet moved into position around the planet but did not attack. They waited and watched like predators circling wounded prey. On Earth, the economic effects of the trade embargo were already being felt. Stock markets crashed as companies lost their alien contracts. Unemployment rose as factories closed. Food prices went up as imports from agricultural worlds stopped coming. But something surprising happened. Instead of blaming their government for the crisis, most humans supported the decision. Protests formed in major cities, but they were protests demanding more help for the Volani, not less. "Stand with the outcasts" became the rallying cry. Children drew pictures of humans and Volani holding hands. Musicians wrote songs about standing up to bullies. The crisis had awakened something deep in human nature. President Inho received reports that several other minor species were privately expressing support for humanity's position. They were too scared to speak publicly, but the message was clear. Humanity was not alone in opposing the Council's cruelty. The galaxy was changing. For the first time in centuries, someone had stood up to the great powers and survived. The question now was how long they could keep standing. 6 months had passed since the Volani evacuation began. The cost of humanity's moral stand was becoming clear. On Mars, food lines stretched around city blocks. The Red Planet's hydroponic farms could not replace the agricultural imports that had been cut off by the embargo. Admiral Young-soo stood before the Earth Defense Council, his uniform crisp but his face tired. The holographic display behind him showed human colonies across known space, many marked in red. 3 colonies have officially requested permission to break from Earth policy, he reported. New Geneva, Port Armstrong, and the Titan mining complex. They say they cannot survive much longer without galactic trade. Secretary General Sehyeon leaned forward in her chair. What about the others? Holding for now, Young-soo replied. But morale is dropping fast. People are scared, hungry, and angry. They want to know when this will end. On Europa Station, miners worked double shifts just to meet basic oxygen production needs. The alien technology they had used to extract ice efficiently was no longer available for repairs. Human engineering was good, but it was not advanced enough to maintain the complex systems. Manager Tai Kyung watched his workers struggle with equipment that should have been replaced months ago. How much longer can we keep this up? He asked his assistant. Maybe 6 more months, came the reply. After that, we start losing life support systems. But it was not just the economic pressure that was hurting humanity. The psychological warfare had begun. Dr. Myung-hee worked in the refugee ships that now orbited Earth's moon. As a human psychologist, she had volunteered to help traumatized Vellani families adjust to their new reality. What she found broke her heart. Her current patient was Sang-min, a young Vellani who had lost his entire extended family when their transport ship suffered engine failure during the evacuation. 43 relatives gone in an instant. I keep feeling their emotions, Sang-min told her through a translator device. His yellow eyes were dull with grief. In my dreams, I feel their fear when the ship exploded. I feel their sadness at leaving home. Vellani minds are connected in ways your species cannot understand. Myung-hee had learned that Vellani emotional connections went far beyond human understanding. When one Vellani suffered, all Vellani felt it to some degree. The entire species was experiencing collective trauma as they watched their civilization scatter across the galaxy. How do you cope with feeling everyone's pain? She asked. We remember that pain shared is pain reduced, Sang-min replied. When your people came to help us, we felt something new. We felt hope that was not just our own. Meanwhile, Dr. Woo-jin continued his research into Vellani neurology. Working alongside Hae-won, a Vellani scientist who had been forced to abandon her life's work, he was uncovering secrets that could change galactic civilization. Look at this brain scan, Hae-won said, pointing to the display with one of her 3-fingered hands. This is a Vellani child solving a mathematical problem. See how the neural pathways light up? Woo-jin stared at the scan in amazement. The child's brain was processing the problem on 17 different dimensional levels simultaneously. This is impossible. How can consciousness exist in so many dimensions at once? For us, it is normal, Hae-won explained. We see connections between things that seem unrelated. We understand the emotions behind words before the words are spoken. We feel the health of entire ecosystems through quantum resonance. That is why the Council fears you, Woo-jin said, understanding finally dawning. You can see through their lies because you perceive reality itself differently. But their research was interrupted by terrible news. Ki-tai, the administrator of Harmony Station, had been found dead in his quarters. The station was one of the largest refugee centers, housing over 10,000 Vellani families. Ki-tai had refused multiple bribes and threats to abandon his charges. The cause of death was officially listed as system failure, but everyone knew the truth. Kavich assassins had killed him with a poison that mimicked technical malfunction. It was a message to other human administrators. Abandon the Vellani or face the consequences. At Ki-tai's memorial service, hundreds of humans and Vellani gathered together. His wife, So-hyun, spoke through her tears. My husband believed that protecting the innocent was more important than protecting himself. He died as he lived, standing between the strong and the weak. The assassination had the opposite effect from what the Kavich intended. Instead of frightening humans into abandoning their Vellani allies, it made them more determined than ever. Secretary General Sehyeon called an emergency session of the Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation attended, their faces grim but resolved. The galactic powers think they can break our will through fear and economic pressure, she announced. They are wrong. Humanity does not bow to bullies. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked the locations of species that had been declared defective by the Council over the past century. The Vellani are not the first, Sehyeon continued. There have been others. The aquatic Marani, forced from their ocean worlds. The crystalline Vorthon, scattered because their light frequencies were incorrect. The gaseous Etherians, driven from their cloud cities because they could not take solid form. The room was silent as the implications sank in. The galactic powers had been conducting systematic genocide for generations, eliminating any species that was different or potentially threatening. We will not stop with the Vellani, Sehyun declared. We will find these other refugees. We will offer them sanctuary. We will build a new kind of galactic community, one based on diversity instead of conformity. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would expand its rescue operations to include all the galaxy's outcasts. But the decision came with immediate consequences. Within hours, luminary energy beings began attacking human shipping lanes. Nethri crystal ships started jamming human communications. Kvetch battle fleets moved closer to human space. Admiral Young-Soo received reports of the escalating aggression. They are testing our resolve, he told the Defense Council. They want to see if we will break under pressure. What are our chances in a direct military confrontation? Asked a council member. Young-Soo was honest. Against any one of the galactic powers we might survive. Against all three working together, we would be destroyed within weeks. But help was coming from an unexpected source. Ambassador Nari received a secret message through encrypted channels. The sender identified himself as Jae-hyun, a mid-level official in the Luminary hierarchy. There are those among us who are disgusted by our government's actions, the message read. We cannot act openly, but we can provide information. The council powers are not as united as they appear. There are cracks in their alliance. The message included intelligence about ship movements, political tensions, and internal conflicts within the galactic powers. It was dangerous information for Jae-hyun to share, but he was risking his life to do what he believed was right. Back on the refugee ships, Vellani families watched human news broadcasts with growing amazement. They saw human children donating their allowances to refugee relief funds. They saw human workers taking pay cuts to support the war effort. They saw human soldiers volunteering for dangerous missions to protect Vellani transports. Why do they sacrifice so much for us? Asked one elderly Vellani. Because they understand something the council has forgotten, replied Taeho, the Vellani representative who had spoken at the original council session. They understand that protecting others is how a species proves it deserves to survive. As the first year of the crisis came to an end, humanity faced its greatest test yet. Economic collapse threatened human civilization. Military pressure grew stronger each day. Assassins stalked human leaders, but something else was growing too. Hope. For the first time in galactic history, someone had stood up to the great powers and survived. Other oppressed species were beginning to believe that change was possible. The galaxy was about to learn that the greatest power was not military might or economic control. The greatest power was the willingness to do what was right no matter the cost. 2 years had passed since the Vellani evacuation began. The human expedition ship Discovery dropped out of hyperspace near a dead system on the edge of known space. Captain Changmin looked at the readings on his screen with growing excitement. There, he said, pointing to a massive structure floating among the asteroids. That has to be it. The structure was clearly artificial but incredibly ancient. It looked like a crystal flower made of metal and energy, its petals stretching for kilometers in every direction. According to the star charts they had found in abandoned Vellani archives, this was one of their species' oldest libraries. Dr. Haewon, the Vellani scientist, felt tears in her large yellow eyes as they approached. I never thought I would see a great archive again, she whispered. My grandmother used to tell me stories about these places. The boarding party that entered the ancient library was small but diverse. Changmin led the humans while Haewon represented the Vellani. They had also brought Gyeonwoo, a representative of the aquatic Marani who had recently joined their alliance. Inside the archive, holographic displays activated automatically as they walked deeper into the structure. The walls came alive with images and sounds from thousands of years ago. They saw the galaxy as it once was, when dozens of different species worked together in peace. This is impossible, Changmin said, watching a hologram of Vellani, Marani, and other species working side by side. The council told us that cooperation between different species was unnatural. Haewon touched a control panel with her 3-fingered hand. More displays activated, showing the true history of galactic civilization. For 8,000 years, my people served as peacekeepers, she explained. We could sense emotions and motivations across species barriers. We helped resolve conflicts before they became wars. The recordings showed Villani mediators solving territorial disputes, trade conflicts, and cultural misunderstandings. Their quantum-based consciousness allowed them to see all sides of every problem simultaneously. They were living bridges between different forms of life. What happened? Asked Yanwu, his aquatic suit bubbling softly as he spoke. The answer came in the next set of recordings. They showed the rise of the three current galactic powers. The Nethri had started as peaceful crystal beings, but their mathematical precision had turned into cold calculation. The Kavech had been individual insects before they formed their aggressive hive minds. The Luminari had once been gentle energy beings before they learned to feed on other species' life force. They formed an alliance, Heiwan said, her voice filled with sadness. They decided that diversity was weakness. They began systematically destroying any species that could threaten their control. The recording showed the terrible truth. For 2,000 years, the galactic powers had been committing genocide. They had erased entire civilizations, rewritten history, and convinced the galaxy that they were the natural rulers of space. How many species have they killed? Changmin asked. The archive's computer answered with a list that scrolled for several minutes. Hundreds of intelligent species, each unique, each irreplaceable, all destroyed because they were different. Changmin immediately sent the recordings back to Earth. Within hours, President Inho was broadcasting them to the entire galaxy. The reaction was explosive. On Earth, Ambassador Nari was meeting secretly with more moderate members of the galactic powers. The group had been growing larger as more aliens became disgusted with their government's cruelty. The recordings cannot be denied, said Jae Hyun, the Luminari official who had been secretly helping humanity. My people's leadership has been lying to us for millennia. Mine as well, added a Nethri crystal being who had introduced herself as Crystal Singer Yunjung. We were taught that mathematical purity required eliminating chaos. We never knew that chaos meant other people. Even some Kvetch drones had broken from their hive minds to join the secret meetings. It was almost unheard of for individual Kvetch to think independently. But the truth about their species' crimes had shattered their collective consciousness. Meanwhile, Captain Sung Ho was facing humanity's greatest military test yet. His small fleet was escorting a convoy of Villani refugees when Kvetch battleships surrounded them near the neutral zone. Human Captain, came the transmission from the lead Kvetch ship. You are transporting criminals who have violated galactic law. Surrender them immediately. Sung Ho looked at his tactical display. 15 Kvetch warships against his 5 human vessels. The odds were terrible, but he had advantages the enemy did not know about. Sitting next to him was Hyo Jin, a young Villani who had volunteered to serve as a tactical advisor. Her quantum consciousness could predict enemy movements by sensing the emotional patterns of their commanders. The lead ship's captain is angry and impatient, Hyo Jin said quietly. He will attack from the left in 30 seconds. The second ship's captain is more careful. He will wait to see what happens. All ships, Sung Ho broadcast to his fleet. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Follow my lead exactly. When the Kvetch attack came, the human ships moved like they were dancing. They seemed to know exactly where each enemy shot would go before it was fired. They dodged weapons that should have destroyed them, turned away from attacks that should have caught them by surprise. The Kvetch commanders were confused and angry. How could the humans predict their tactics so perfectly? The third ship is about to fire missiles, Hyo Jin warned. The captain is frustrated. He will aim for our engine section. Sung Ho smiled grimly. All ships execute pattern 7. The human fleet suddenly split apart, then came back together in a new formation. The Kvetch missiles flew harmlessly through empty space where the human ships had been moments before. For 20 minutes, the battle continued. The human ships took some damage, but they survived every attack. More importantly, they began to fight back. Human weapons were not as powerful as Kvetch guns, but they were more accurate. Working together, the human fleet began picking apart the enemy formation. Finally, the Kvetch commander had enough. This is impossible, he transmitted. How are you reading our minds? We are not reading your minds, Sung Ho replied. We are listening to your hearts, and your hearts are telling us that you know this is wrong. The battle ended when 3 Kvetch ships suddenly stopped firing. Their crews had decided they could not kill innocent refugees anymore. The rest of the enemy fleet retreated in confusion. News of the victory spread quickly through human space and beyond. For the first time, a human military force had defeated a galactic power in direct combat. More importantly, they had done it with the help of the very aliens the galactic powers claimed were inferior. Back on Earth, the government was receiving secret messages from across the galaxy. Minor species that had hidden in fear for centuries were finally reaching out. "We are the Satori," read one message. "We were driven from our worlds because our telepathic abilities scared the Council. We have been hiding in asteroid fields for 300 years. We are the Rime," read another. "Our crime was that we could manipulate gravity without technology. The Council said we were too dangerous to live." Each message told the same story. Unique, beautiful species driven into hiding or destroyed because they were different. But now, for the first time in centuries, they were willing to come out of hiding. Secretary General Sehyun called a meeting of all human colonial administrators. On the screen, she could see representatives from Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other human settlements. "We are forming a new alliance," she announced, "not to conquer or control but to protect and preserve. Every species that has been cast out by the galactic powers will have a home with us." The response was immediate and positive. Even the colonies that had been struggling with the economic embargo voted to support the new policy. Humanity's moral stand had given them something more valuable than trade profits. It had given them a purpose. Dr. Wu Jin was working around the clock to prepare for the influx of new refugees. Each species had different biological needs. The Satori required low gravity and high humidity. The Rime needed dense atmospheres with specific gas mixtures. The Etherians existed as conscious clouds that needed specially designed containment fields. "Can we handle all of these different requirements?" asked his assistant. Wu Jin smiled as he watched human engineers working alongside Villani architects, Marani biotechnicians, and the first Satori refugees to reach human space. "Look around," he said. "We are not doing this alone anymore." The alliance was growing stronger each day. Each new species brought unique abilities and knowledge. The Villani provided wisdom and emotional intelligence. The Marani offered advanced biotechnology. The Satori shared their telepathic networks for faster communication. The Rime helped human ships move more efficiently through gravity fields. But the greatest change was not technological. It was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, different species were working together as equals. No one was considered superior or inferior. Everyone had something valuable to contribute. The old galactic order was crumbling, and in its place something beautiful was being born. 5 years had passed since the Villani evacuation began. The galaxy was a different place now. On Viridian Prime, which had been restored to its rightful owners, children played in gardens that sparkled with crystal formations. But these were not just Villani children. Human kids ran alongside them, laughing in the universal language of joy. Ambassador Yuna stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, watching ships from 47 different species dock peacefully together. Each vessel was unique, reflecting the biology and culture of its builders. Crystalline Nethri ships that sang with harmonic frequencies, flowing Marani vessels that looked like swimming through space, Etherian cloud ships that existed in multiple dimensions at once. "Hard to believe it all started with one species asking for help," said Daejin, the Villani who now served as co-leader of the Free Alliance alongside Yuna. "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes," Yuna replied. The transformation had not been easy. 3 years earlier, the old galactic powers had made their final attempt to crush the growing alliance. The Battle of the Seven Suns had lasted for months, with ships from both sides scattered across multiple star systems. But the Free Alliance had advantages that the old powers could not match. Villani tactical genius guided human engineering skills. Satori telepaths coordinated attacks across vast distances instantly. Rime gravity manipulators allowed alliance ships to move in ways that defied physics. Marani biotechnology kept damaged vessels operational when they should have been destroyed. Most importantly, the alliance fought for something the galactic powers had forgotten: hope. Every ship that fought carried families, children, dreams of a better future. The old powers fought only to maintain control. The final battle had ended not with military victory but with revelation. Director Moonho of the Human Xenological Institute had spent years preparing for this moment. Working with historians from every Alliance species, he had compiled the complete historical record of galactic civilization. Citizens of the galaxy, he had broadcast on every communication frequency, you have been lied to for 2,000 years. The evidence was overwhelming. Ship logs, government documents, personal recordings, archaeological evidence, all of it proving the systematic genocide committed by the galactic powers. The broadcast had included testimonies from survivors, footage of destroyed worlds, and records of the beautiful civilizations that had been erased. The reaction across the galaxy had been immediate. On Nethri crystal worlds, mathematical minds that had been programmed for efficiency suddenly understood the true cost of their calculations. In Kavich hives, individual drones began thinking for themselves in massive numbers. Among the Luminari, energy beings who had fed on others' life force felt shame for the first time in millennia. The old governments had tried to suppress the broadcasts, but it was too late. The truth spread faster than they could contain it. Within weeks, revolution swept through the former galactic powers. Now, 5 years later, Ambassador Bitna walked through the halls of the new Galactic Assembly building. Unlike the old council chambers that had been designed to intimidate, this building welcomed diversity. Rooms were designed with different atmospheric requirements. Translation systems worked in real time. Every species had an equal voice. The vote is unanimous, announced Assembly President Chul Su, a Vallani whose calm demeanor had made him perfect for leading the new government. The Galactic Charter of Diversity is officially adopted. The document they had just approved was revolutionary. It declared that differences in biology, consciousness, and culture were strengths, not weaknesses. It established the right of every species to exist without fear of persecution. It created support systems for refugees and outcasts. Most importantly, it made genocide a crime against the entire galaxy. In the audience, former enemies sat together. Reformed Nethri crystals worked alongside the Etherian clouds they had once tried to destroy. Kavich individuals shared ideas with the Satori telepaths their hive minds had feared. Even some Luminari had learned to sustain themselves without feeding on others' life force, but not everyone had accepted the new order. In distant star systems, holdout fleets still flew the banners of the old galactic powers. They raided trading routes and attacked isolated colonies, clinging to their supremacist beliefs. They will fade away eventually, predicted Admiral Youngsu during a security briefing. Without new recruits and with their supply lines cut, they cannot maintain themselves indefinitely. What about their supporters? Asked Yuna. Fewer every day, Youngsu replied. It is hard to recruit people to fight for oppression when they can see freedom working so well. The success of the Free Alliance was visible everywhere. Trade between species had increased tenfold as barriers were removed. Scientific advancement accelerated as different forms of intelligence worked together. Art and culture flourished as beings shared their unique perspectives. On Earth, President So Young walked through the streets of New Geneva, one of the colonies that had struggled most during the early days of the embargo. Now it was thriving as a major trade hub. Alien and human families lived side by side, their children attending integrated schools where human creativity met Vallani wisdom and Marani biotechnology. Was it worth it? Asked a reporter following the president's tour. So Young stopped to watch a group of children playing. A human girl was explaining mathematics to a young Vallani, while a Satori child shared telepathic pictures with a Rhyme youth who existed partially in another dimension. Look at them, So Young said. 5 years ago, these children would have been taught to fear each other. Today, they are learning from each other. How could that not be worth any price? The changes went beyond politics and economics. The galaxy itself was becoming more beautiful. Worlds that had been strip-mined by the old powers were being restored using combined technologies. Dead systems were being brought back to life. Species that had been driven to near extinction were recovering. Captain Jun Ki, now an adult, stood on the bridge of his ship as it approached Harmony 7, one of the new integrated colonies. His crew included beings from 12 different species, all working together as naturally as breathing. Incoming transmission from the surface, reported his Etherian communications officer, whose voice came through dimensional translators. On the screen appeared Yunho, the planetary administrator. The Vallani had grown old in the years since the crisis began, but his eyes still held the same wisdom that had impressed humans so long ago. Welcome to Harmony 7, Yunho said. We have been preparing for your arrival. Junki smiled. How are the new refugees adapting? See for yourself, Yunho replied, turning his camera to show the colony's central plaza. The sight took Junki's breath away. Thousands of beings from dozens of species moved together in organized chaos. Street vendors from 6 different worlds sold foods that would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago. Children played games that combined physical movement, telepathic communication, and dimensional manipulation. Artists created sculptures that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. This is what the galaxy was meant to be, Yunho said softly. This is what your species helped us remember. As Junki's ship landed, he thought about the long journey that had brought them here. It had started with one simple decision: to help those who could not help themselves. That decision had cost humanity dearly. They had faced economic collapse, military attack, and political isolation, but they had gained something infinitely more valuable. They had gained a family that spanned the stars. Later that evening, Junki walked through the colony with Yunho. They passed through districts where different species had recreated pieces of their homeworlds. A Satori meditation garden where thoughts became visible music. A rhyme gravity park where children played games that defied physics. An Etherean cloud garden where consciousness danced in patterns of living light. Do you think it will last? Junki asked. Yunho was quiet for a moment, his quantum consciousness processing the question on multiple levels. Your species taught us something important, he finally said. You taught us that the most powerful force in the universe is not military might or economic control. It is the willingness to do what is right, even when it costs everything. They stopped at a memorial wall where names were carved in dozens of different scripts. These were the beings who had died during the years of struggle. Human administrators assassinated for protecting refugees. Villani families lost in dangerous evacuations. Brave individuals from every species who had sacrificed themselves for the dream of a better galaxy. They did not die for nothing, Yunho said. They died so that children like those could grow up in a galaxy where being different is celebrated, not punished. In the distance, they could see the lights of other colonies scattered across the system. Each one was unique, reflecting the needs and cultures of its inhabitants. But all of them shared the same basic principle. Diversity was strength, not weakness. The galaxy had learned a fundamental truth. When beings work together, respecting and celebrating their differences, they can accomplish anything. They can turn away from hatred and choose love. They can reject oppression and embrace freedom. They can build something,